Hello, everybody. Welcome to Libertarian Front. Today, I want to talk about the Ukraine-Russia war conflict. It has been in the news very much lately with the little spat that occurred between President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine, President Donald Trump of the United States, and Vice President J.D. Vance. And the title of this video is Ukraine Has a Math Problem, The Path to Peace. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. This is Libertarian Front. If you like my content, please like, subscribe, comment, and share. My name is Joe Palmetto. I'm a lawyer in the Pittsburgh area with libertarian-leaning views. And here we talk about politics, libertarian viewpoints, etc. Please hit me with a like, a subscribe, or a share. The channel is new. It's been growing, but I want to grow it even more. Now, the title of this video is Ukraine Has a Math Problem. So the right side of American politics has, to a certain degree, and I think it varies even through the Republican Party and right-leaning Americans, there's support for Ukraine, but there's also a lot of questioning and wondering why the United States is engaged in this conflict and why the United States is pouring so much money into one side on a conflict half a world away. Meanwhile, the left in the United States has very much been supportive of the money sent to Ukraine and essentially for the continuation of the war. And the war has been ongoing since 2022. We're in 2025. And I think, initially, if everybody recalls, world leaders were like, let's send a plane to get Zelensky out of Ukraine whenever the Russians initially invaded. And Zelensky famously said, I don't need a ride, I need ammunition. And many leaders in the West, primarily the United States, many leaders in the West responded, sent him ammunition, sent them weapons, sent Ukraine what they needed to fight the war. And they were largely able to repel the Russians, at least from the territory around Kyiv, and stop their country from being overwhelmed or overtaken in a matter of days. And then the nature of the war began to change. Russia was making progress in the east, which I think it's significant, a mostly Russian-speaking territory. And they made slow, kind of grinding gains over the first few months of the war and took a nice-sized chunk of Ukraine for their control. Then the next year, I believe it was in 2023, Ukraine launched a counterattack and took back significant parts of territory from Russia. And then at that point, the war began to ease into a stalemate. We had the issue in Bakhmut where Yevgeny Prigozhin, the leader of the Wagner Group, had like a short-lived rebellion against Russia, and things seemed to really appear to be going Ukraine's way. But after that, the rebellion was, let's say, defeated, or he quit. He made a deal with Putin and ended up dead in a plane crash. Since then, things have not been going so great for Ukraine. The war became a war of attrition. And in wars of attrition, generally the side with more people, more soldiers, a greater economy, a greater size, more resources is the side that wins. After the Prigozhin incident, Ukraine, I believe it was 2024, launched their second counterattack across almost all fronts. And they did not make significant progress at all. They took little pieces of territory, but the Russians had dug in with layer upon layer upon layer of defenses, including minefields. And the Ukrainian counterattack made very little progress. And since then, 2024 counterattack, the Russians have kind of adapted to a lot of Ukraine's technological advantages. You can search on YouTube. Jake Bro is a liberal source of information. He'll talk about this. There's another channel where a German, I think it's like a German army officer, breaks down the war, really gives very objective information about the military situation in Ukraine. Also, since then, North Korea has sent 10,000 troops to the Russian front to support Russia, and Russia has been making very slow but steady gains in the past few months. Oh, I forgot to mention though, yes, Ukraine did launch a counterattack into Russian territory and captured a portion of Kursk. But I think they're going to have a hard time doing that again, as Russia will now reinforce the lines all across the Ukrainian front, the Ukrainian border. And so I wouldn't expect to see an attack like that be successful again. Of course, you never know, but it doesn't look like it. So we're in a stalemate. And at this point, Donald Trump becomes elected president of the United States. The United States have been providing the lion's share of monetary support to Ukraine, at least as a single country. The EU as a whole had given more, but the United States had practically matched the EU's contribution. And Trump is taking a bit of a different stance, and I think he put it pretty well during that the White House, the Oval Office spat. He said, listen, I'm not aligned with Russia. I'm not aligned with Ukraine. I'm aligned with the United States of America. We're not aligned with anybody. We're trying to reach a deal that is for the good of the world. Oh, everybody raise your cup, your glass in the air. Sip with me. It tastes better when we sip together. Cheers. It's ginger ale, not beer. So where does that leave us, right? So Europe has decided that they're going to maybe step up a little bit and step into the void to support Ukraine. But if you look, and I didn't pull these numbers up, but easily both countries appear to be over 100,000 military deaths. Ukraine may have an equal number of civilian deaths. And again, if you follow the strategic side of this war, it has been getting bloodier and bloodier day by day. And they're sending drones against each other. So in a war of attrition, and will more support make a difference for Ukraine in a war of attrition? And I'm just not sure that it will. The last 3-4 years, the war's been being fought, and they say, oh, we just need F-16s. Well, now they have F-16s. We just need this weapon or that weapon or ATACMS or long-range missiles and more air defense. And we're going to break through and we can end the war with our counterattack. And it hasn't had that much of an impact. Russia has adapted to much of this, and Russia still has an overwhelming edge in artillery, which is doing a lot of the damage for the Russians against the Ukrainians. And so Russia gets a boost of 10,000 soldiers from North Korea. What if North Korea were to send 100,000 troops? What would that mean for Ukraine? And the Europeans who are going to continue to support them, are they going to send 100,000 troops? I seriously doubt it. And so I think ultimately Ukraine has a math problem. All right. And we'll start here. This is, of course, not exact, but this is worlddata.info. This is just a nice graph, but everything I saw had numbers comparable to this. The population of Russia is 143,826,000. The population of Ukraine is 37,733,000. So the population of Russia could be divided into the population. Ukraine could be divided in the population of Russia 1, 2, 3, 4 times. Right. Well, for 40, 80, 120 million, almost 4 times. Russia has almost 4 times the people. And so, in a war where it's pretty close, actually, 1-to-1 casualty rate on each side, who's going to win out in the long run? This is why I think Ukraine has a math problem. So the Soviet Union in World War Two, they lost more lives. World War Two deaths. They lost more lives than any other country, any other military. And if you look up at the top, the red are military deaths. So we're talking almost 11 million military deaths by the Soviet Union. And then we're talking almost 24 million civilian deaths. China was number 2. Poland with a lot of deaths. And look at deaths as percentage of population. Interestingly, Poland had the most deaths as percentage of population, followed by Lithuania, but the Soviet Union, almost 13% of their population. So if the Soviet Union was willing to sacrifice this many lives in World War II, what do you think they're going to sacrifice in this war? If you followed Russian propaganda, and I haven't followed it directly, but through some other channels, you'll see that the Russians have framed this, rightfully so to some degree, as a war against the West. Russia has framed this to the Russian people as a war against not just Ukraine, but against Ukraine, the United States, the United Kingdom, France, Germany, their World War II, their main World War II opponent. Russia's framed this as an existential battle against the entire Western alliance. So, do you really think that the Russian people are going to give up on their leader or want their leader to surrender? I very seriously doubt it. In most wars, World War II is just our most recent best example. The Soviet Union and Russia has taken a staggering amount of deaths. Now, maybe Ukraine is willing to make a similar commitment, but if so, that leaves Ukraine with this math problem. 143 million Russians, 37 million Ukrainians, and what if we throw 100,000 North Korean troops on top of that? I just don't think Ukraine can outright win this war. I don't believe they can. Russia has been entrenched in those territories in the Donbass for 3 years, built massive defenses. So I'm just not sure. I just don't believe Ukraine, no matter how many weapons and how much money the West throws at it, all they're doing is throwing money at this, and that can matter in a war of attrition. But Russia has also turned their entire country into a war economy and a war machine. And, again, it's pure numbers, 143 million, 37 million. I mean, Russia lost almost as many people in World War II as the entire population of Ukraine. So I just don't think the Ukrainians have enough human beings. There's not enough Ukrainian human beings on this planet for Ukraine to win this war. There hasn't been significant civil unrest in Russia either. There hasn't been a huge opposition to this war. Yeah, at the beginning there were protests. Lots of Russians left or were expelled. Those were the people who probably would have made up the spearhead of some sort of civil unrest. But with them gone, there's been very little in Russia. And of course they face reprisal, but the Russians also, the Russian Revolution, the people faced reprisal when they overthrew the Tsar. If things are bad enough, they'll do it. I don't believe that things are anywhere near bad enough in Russia for them to do this. They have gotten around the greatest sanctions regime in the history of the world. They have China, they have India as trade partners two massive countries and massive economies, and other countries too that are supporting or at least still trading with Russia. So I don't think Ukraine can keep this up. And so what we're seeing is the United States, or well, it was the United States, and maybe it's best if the United States just says, "Hey, Europe, you guys go ahead and do this." They're funding an army. I just am not sure that it has the capability to win. And these European countries are not going to send their own people to fight this war. Maybe if they did, maybe they would have a chance, but it's not going to happen. And the Russians are willing to dedicate everything to winning this war. So what does that bring us to when it comes to negotiations? Well, I think Ukraine, and I may be wrong, but I think Ukraine may be at their high point as far as negotiations are concerned. Because right now they still have the nominal support of the United States. Also, they have territory in Kursk that they can trade. And look, if Zelensky is trying to play for a better deal, okay, you can try to play for a better deal. But if you lose the United States, you're going to lose some of your clout. And if you lose Kursk, you're going to be even more on your heels. So this may be a high point as far as negotiation leverage for Ukraine. And so to write this whole thing off and to kind of brush the Trump administration out of the window, which it's their right to do, I don't know if that's going to help them gain a better bargaining position. But let's be honest, all Ukraine is really doing, in my opinion, is fighting to get perhaps a better bargaining position. And Zelensky would say early in the war, "Oh, the war will end when Russia leaves our territory." It's not going to happen, sir, and you appear not to have been able to dislodge them, not without overwhelming military support. Which even what the UK just took $2 billion of Russian assets and sent it back over. Once I see it, I'll believe it, but it hasn't come from the Europeans yet. So I don't know if it's ever going to. And you may lose your bargaining leverage and end up in a situation where a deal may be even worse. And I think if Ukraine had, talked to the Trump administration about getting a better deal rather than just kind of writing off a deal outright, I think the Trump administration may help them achieve those goals. But and perhaps that's ongoing. But to write off the United States and try and think you're going to get better chips going forward, you better get lucky, or you better have a hell of a plan to throw a counterpunch at Russia, because I can't see Russia backing down from this. They see this. This is World War III for the Russians by all accounts. I don't think they're going to back down from this war. With all these countries backing Ukraine. They're not going to roll their tanks out of the Donbass and give Ukraine their territory back. So Ukraine has a pretty big math problem. I think Russia would be willing to sacrifice enough citizens that equal the entire population of Ukraine before they would surrender or move the territory. So some sort of ceasefire is going to have to come one way or another. If Ukraine wants to fight another year before it happens, that's their right. But, every country that supports them doesn't have to stay in that position as well. So the Ukrainian math problem is not going away. And all they're really doing is maybe trying to vie for a better position in the negotiations. And as much as, I think there's a lot, I do think there's a lot to admire about Zelensky. I really do. But he may not be the one to come in and negotiate. He may not be the best leader to negotiate a peace deal for Ukraine. And in November of 2024, the Ukrainian people, 52%, favored a peace deal that was quick with the Russians. So thank you very much for tuning in. My name is Joe Palmetto. I just want to share my thoughts on the recent things that happened sort of in the White House. These are peripheral thoughts to that. But I wanted to talk about Ukraine's predicament. And in the end, It's a math problem. Thank you, everybody, for joining me. If you like my channel, please like, subscribe, comment, and share. This is the Libertarian Front. All right, have a great day. Bye-bye.